in terms of asking about their details and where their identity is, I think that's all right with us to a certain extent because there can be financial frauds involving in there. But beyond that,
So what is the type of request that you would be okay with? What should it be? So phone call is fine, legal notice is fine, is a secretary signing an order asking to give it is fine, a court giving an... So what's your threshold? Like where is it acceptable, when is it not?
acceptable is till the time I'm not held hostage. So there are times when I'm being arm twisted to divulge the information and I'm being shown as the devil in the room. And to the extent that accounts getting frozen down, which is impacting the businesses, then I have to take a call there, which is really my business which is suffering there. So I really want a stop somewhere because they're really wanting us to do their job. And they want us every detail down to the T, which is very difficult for us to provide. And in the garb of, there can be phone calls, there can be inundated phone calls, and it just does not end there. They keep asking us, and there are few things which are happening right now, and the culprit is right in front, sitting in front of the police and saying that I have done it, but we are being questioned now.
So what's the best case scenario? That's
So
the primary question. What is acceptable for you?
Right. No, a best case scenario would be a request that is firstly is legitimate, is proportional, and I think everything that we discussed with regard to Putraswamy and like in terms of legal standards, but also one that that does not interfere in the ability in the technical design of systems, because many of these things are technical choices that startups, that companies, that like entities of all sizes choose to make in terms of how they design the system, and using law to like regulate the design of technologies is not only very, very ineffective, but it very rarely works the way people sort of want it to.
Number one is that it should be possible to do technically first. Otherwise, we end up in a situation now, who is authorized to send that information that we have to very carefully weigh. For example, blocking instruction has to come from our licensor. That's what it is. And over the years, we have constantly given a pushback to some agencies who have asked, we says, come through licensor, which is DOT for us.
What's a feasible traceability request?
No, feasible traceability request for us is they say that who sent this, who this IP number belongs to whom. Now, when normally it is possible to do, but when the Wi-Fi comes, then it becomes a difficult situation. All we are able to give that this mobile number asks for the password which we gave. Beyond that, we cannot do. But if that mobile number for some reason is not traceable, they come back to us. Hello, what was the face? Did you take a snapshot? Did you take the KYC of the person?
Okay, so 2 quick points. One, which was made, is that the request should come from a competent authority. That is what is stated specifically in our license. So it has
Define
to be,
competent authority.
it's basically either the DOT or the courts.
Okay.
So that's where we will act. In terms of what the reasonableness of the traceability is, I think the points where it enters or exits our systems. So we cannot go beyond what is within our system. At best, we'll be able to say where it entered our system and where it exited.
What if someone's using a VPN? Therefore, you would not have the ability to trace.
Correct. So it's just that
Okay.
what is feasible and what is possible.
So technical feasibility is, of course, the first point, and the second point is, of course, in terms of procedural safeguards and lawfulness of the order or the competency of the agency or the authority involved.
Okay. So what level of authority would be fine?
Like we shouldn't be taking a call on that. I think that's up to the government to decide what authority should be fine. I think.
What's your best case scenario?
Like for us, the best case scenario would be judicial oversight or a judicial authority taking the call on it.
I used to work for intermediaries, I can pay you. So I can give you some instances, or I can give you my view on your question of what is a reasonable request. Yeah. That was the question, right? And I agree with the room when they say that due process needs to be maintained, court order, etc., etc. But this is all how do you get to the request or how you make the request. But the nature of the request that we noticed was one of the key factors was the imminence of danger. So, for instance, there is a standing instruction set by a customer on his credit card, and you're noticing that transactions of 1999, right under 2000, after which an OTP kicks in, is being made constantly at 2 o'clock in the morning. And you're requesting that this be traced back to a particular originator. There is an imminence of threat here, which is a common thread that we noticed in the requests that we would get. This is just a absolutely anonymous example, but the form of making the request is one aspect of it, due process, court process, etc. But the nature of the request itself has to be based on certain principles. One of the principles that we saw was the imminence of the threat, and the possibility of greater damage if immediate action was not taken.
Can the level of threat be graded? Can it be defined under law and a different set of requirements for different levels of threat be created?
Sure.
So what would you prefer there?
Sure. So the level of threat here, that sort of goes into a deeply prescriptive law. Is there a threat to national security, which will again become ambiguous. But the point I was trying to make is not of the level of threat, but the degree of its imminence. So if by not taking any action for 2 weeks, constant transactions of 999 are being made through a foreign server, unless I block my card, it's going to keep going up to n number of transactions. It's not the level of threat, but it's the degree of damage that is caused if immediate action is not taken. So it's imminent threat, not degree of threat that I was trying to